Jesus is taking a nap through one heck of a maelstrom. And these disciples, most of them are fishermen. They're used to storms on the Sea of Galilee, quite common. But even their muscles are tense with the effort of bailing out the constantly coming seawater. And it's not only their muscles that are tense, they're starting to get tense because why is Jesus just asleep? Doesn't he care? Also, he's 2 extra arms. He could grab a bucket, He could help out. And so eventually one of them, I always imagine it's Peter, right? Peter goes back and says, "Teacher, you're asleep. We're about to die. Do you want to help?" And I always think that the disciples imagine he's going to grab a bucket or an oar or something, but instead, Jesus just stands up and says, because he doesn't need to shout, "Peace, be still." And it's this unearthly calm then. The only sign that anything happened is the water sloshing at their ankles. And the text says the disciples are in awe, but really in the Greek, it says more like the disciples are freaking the heck out. They're terrified. They're afraid at the beginning because of the waves, and now they're afraid at the end of the story because what the heck just happened? And fear undergirds and permeates the entirety of the story, which is perhaps why that's what Jesus asks about in the middle of the story. Often, we tend to read these questions Jesus asks as rhetorical. Why don't you have faith? Or real judgy, Jesus is angry at the disciples. He's annoyed, and so he's letting them have it. But I wonder if that's our interpretation imbued with some years and some culture and some history. Instead, let's imagine Jesus wakes up from his nap, pretty shocked to find the storm also. He stills it. It's totally calm. And the unearthly quiet is in the boat too. And he looks from quiet disciple to quiet disciple, and he sees fear written all over their faces. And so he asks, "Why are you afraid?" It's a very different question if you just change the emphasis. It really is a question. And it really gets to the heart of what the text is about. Why are you afraid? The answer might seem obvious, the waves were really big and that lightning was real close. But generally the storm isn't quite what the fear is really about. It's something deeper within. And so Jesus looks at the faces of his disciples and he sees the fear is different, right? For Andrew, the fear is not the wind and the waves, but what will drowning be like? That seems horrible. What will it be like? And for Peter, his family's on shore still. Will he ever see his loved ones again, or is this it? That's fear. And then he looks over and he sees Matthew, and the fear is different still. The fear is actually about Jesus. He thought they were going to die, and Jesus was just asleep. Jesus claimed to care about them, but the dude was just asleep. He didn't seem to care at all. And Matthew wonders, have I chosen to follow a total charlatan? And am I going to die for the decision? And move over one more, and it's James. And he has chills running up and down his spine because it's unearthly calm. And that's either divine or demonic. And which is it? James isn't sure. Why are you afraid? And then the next question Jesus asks is, still have you no faith? And again, it doesn't have to be chastisey, judgy Jesus. Jesus is actually asking these real questions because questions, not answers, are how we open the heart. Jesus is interested in his disciples opening their hearts and connecting the faith or the trust they have in Jesus with the fear. That there's an inverse relationship between the two. As they trust Jesus more, the fears that they have, Jesus can address them better. They know they can trust him. They know that they don't have to fear those particular things. It's an inverse relationship. But Jesus doesn't need to preach at them. He needs them to become aware themselves of what is the fear. And what is it that keeps them from trusting Jesus? This is only chapter 4 of Mark. The journey is still to be had. And the journey will be, why are you afraid? And are you able to trust more? And if the disciples are able to know why they're afraid and name it, they can trust. And then, hopefully, things will be different the next time the storm rolls through. Because the storms always roll through, don't they? The whirlwinds and the maelstroms, they're always coming. They come in our lives in the form of car wrecks and sick pets and sick kids, and at a deeper level, they're lost jobs and shrinking bank accounts and retirement that seems endless. They're diagnoses. They're the loss of loved ones. They threaten to sort of swamp our boat all the time. And then there's the collective boat, the bigger problems that are swamping all of us, from climate change to COVID, policing to partisanship. And if we really are honest, there's fear in that for all of us. We don't necessarily like to admit it. Even the disciples don't want to admit it. We'd rather hide it with some sorrow or some anger, tamp it down so we just don't deal with that. Later never comes. Have some amnesia about it, forced memory loss about the difficulties, or we wrap it in some pious language. It's not as bad as other people's suffering. I'll be okay. And yet, to not name it, to not identify it, is to block the way to trust. And so, why are you afraid? Sometimes it is the thing in itself. I lose sleep over diminishing ice shelves. But sometimes it's something much deeper, just like it was for the disciples. The problems we have with our spouses or our teenager or our 2-year-olds, they're problems, but what does that say about us, our capacity to love and be loving? Are we worth being loved and loving? That's a fear. The loss of the job, the shrinking bank account. Can I actually be secure? And am I who I thought I would be by now? Or do these things just keep happening to me? The birthday that seems to come quicker every year. What am I doing? What is meaning? What is purpose? And I'm fearful I won't find it. And the illness. What will it be like? How sick will I be? What will the treatment be? What will it cost? What will be the pain? And the bigger picture questions, things about our world that we feel so powerless over, trigger the fact that we're powerless over it. What is one life? Does it have meaning? And am I culpable for what's happening? And what would I do with that if I could? And then there's that guy in the boat. He seems like he's taking a pretty long nap. And he said he cared, but for real, the storm is raging. And could you at least grab a bucket? Or have I spent all this time in church praying and thinking about God, and really, nothing? Why are you afraid? And still have you no faith? Asked Jesus. Trust in Jesus is about our hearts, just as much as fear is about our hearts. And so often what we want is Jesus to sort of wave a wand and solve the maelstrom that's around us in a Dumbledorian kind of way. But that's not often what Jesus does, and I'm not sure that's what the promise is. Jesus, after all, comes into this world to bear its brokenness. He hangs on a cross, and it's crucified hands that hold us. Jesus bears the brokenness of the world. He doesn't offer a simple solution. He bears our brokenness, and he's with us in the boat. And until that day when God makes all things new, sin and death and evil, they still have their sway, so the storms will still come, but we're not alone. And perhaps it is that the external storm isn't what gets quelled, but it's the one inside of us. That really this story is about how much can we trust the one who's in the boat with all of our fears. And to the proportion that we can do that, Jesus calms the storm inside of us. That we begin to find an inner peace that gives us the strength to ply the oars. And that really gives us a broader horizon. We trust that Jesus truly has the power to calm our fears, to make our sorrows cease. Then we see that, of course, we're navigating through this storm and the next, but we're held, and all the boats are held in love. And we came from love, and we will return to love. And God is with us all the way. And we do not get to say the outcome of every storm. I would like to pick the storms that get quelled. I don't want somebody's pain to keep going on, or that war to keep being fought. But the promise is that Jesus stills our storms and gives us the capacity to be present, to be grounded, and to know a deeper truth in the reality that we see. That the God who spoke at the beginning of creation and ordered chaos will speak again at the end of time and order all of this chaos into new creation. And until then, God is with us, promising to quell the storms. It may not be the one we want, and the storms may cause us heartbreak we don't know. But the crucified hands of the broken one hold us, and he is in the boat. So why are we afraid? Can we name it? Can we be real about it? Can we trust Jesus Christ and hear him say in our own lives, peace, peace, be still.